We have a bulletin just received.
I've never encountered anything like this world.
Hi, this is our first instructional video for Project 1, our Color Harmony project, assembled in Adobe Photoshop. If you follow this instruction and set up your document correctly, you'll be ready to print in our Digital Output Center, which is good because that's a required part of this assignment. This video is the first video covering some Photoshop basics. Understanding Photoshop fundamentals is one of the class objectives, and it's necessary to complete your project. This class explores pixel and vector-based image making using Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. Although there are some vector tools in Photoshop and you can import pixel-based images into Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop is quintessentially a pixel-based app. In fact, it's one of the most powerful and versatile apps in existence for the manipulation of pixel-based images. Likewise, Adobe Illustrator is a full-featured and eminently popular app for the creation of vector images. We'll talk a lot more about Adobe Illustrator in the technical instruction for our third project on optical color. Pixels in Photoshop. Each pixel can only be one value and one color. If you have enough pixels at the size that you're viewing it, then your eye and your brain blend it into a continuous, clear image. That's why image resolution is so important. If you don't have enough pixels per inch at the size that you're viewing it, then the image looks jagged and unclear. The Photoshop interface. This is a tour of the Photoshop interface. Up at the top is the menu bar. The menu bar is very well organized into specific categories that have to do with completing tasks or accessing various tools and environments in Photoshop. Many of the menu choices also have keyboard shortcuts. When a menu command has a keyboard shortcut, you can see it in the drop-down menu right next to the command. For instance, instead of selecting File Save to save your document, you can hit Command S on the keyboard. Command P is to print, Command C is to copy, Command V is to paste, Command Z is undo. That's important. If you're new to Photoshop and you accidentally do something like what the hell happened, then Command Z, undo. Every time you do something awesome, File Save or Command S. Over here on the left is the Tools panel. You can select different tools for different functions. If you see a little black arrow in the lower right-hand corner of a tool, that means you can hold it and then access other tool choices underneath. Up here is the Control panel. It is a contextual menu. Every time you select a different tool, then all of the features in the Control panel are all about the settings and variations for that tool. If I choose a selection tool, then it's all stuff about selections. If I select the Crop tool, then it's about different options for cropping. If I select the Brush tool, then it's things like brush size, transparency, etc. So the Control panel changes with context, and it's how you modify the settings for a tool. Over here on the right are panels. If they're all neatly stacked like this, they're called docked panels. There are other panels available, and you can grab a tab of one of these docked panels and tear it away so that it becomes a floating panel. There are lots and lots of panels. There are shortcuts here for some of the panels that you use a lot. And all of the panels are available under the Window menu. So if you are new to Photoshop and you can't find a certain panel that you need, just remember that every panel is found under the Window menu. Where's the History panel? Window, History. The History panel by default records the last 25 steps, the last 25 things that you do in Photoshop. If you do something you don't like, you can retrace your steps in the History panel to a time before you did the thing that you don't like. This is the document window, which is pretty self-explanatory. This is where you see your document that you're working on. You can have more than one document open at the same time. If you do, they appear as tabs in the document window. You can select another image that you have open by clicking on its tab. You can tear away the tab to create a floating document window. You can place it back in the tabs by just dragging it back up to the tabs. You can close the tab by clicking the X on the tab. You can zoom in or zoom out on the document window by using the magnifying glass, the zoom tool, in the Tools panel. You can also go under the View menu at the top, View, Fit on Screen, etc. Or you can use keyboard commands, Command plus to enlarge, Command minus to zoom out. Photoshop is a nicely designed, very consistent application. Once you learn the way that one area of Photoshop works, you'll find that other areas work similarly, so they're easier to figure out. Put your name on your file. I'd like to emphasize one important thing. You should not leave this class without remembering this simple thing. Put your name on your file. For each project you hand in, you'll hand in your digital file to be graded. If your file is called untitled, it's not going to help you get credit for your work. All the other professors will be very happy if at the end of this class I send them students who remember to put their names on their projects. Put your name on your file. Put your name on your file. Setting up your document. Now, make sure that you're in front of the computer and that computer has Adobe Photoshop on it. Let's open up Photoshop and set up your document. So now let's open up Photoshop. There should be a shortcut on the dock, the little PS icon here. Click, and it should open up. So you should follow along with this video and actually set up your document using the instructions in this video so it has the right format and the proper resolution. Go to File, New, and depending on whether you want it horizontal or vertical, let's say that we want this to be horizontal, so we'll type 14, make sure it says inches rather than pixels or another measurement, and 10. Okay? If you decided you want it to be vertical rather than horizontal, you can make this 10 and this 14. Resolution 360 pixels per inch, which is what they like at the output center, RGB color, and instead of sRGB, red, green, and blue, we want Adobe RGB, which has a wider gamut or range of colors that are reproducible. Okay, so it should say width 14 inches, height 10 inches, resolution 360 pixels per inch, RGB color, and Adobe RGB. Now, might as well go ahead and name it as well. Put your name on your document. Scott Ligon Harmony. And hit OK. And there's your blank document ready for you to create things on it or drag things into it. Always the native format. To save your document, hit File, Save. Save frequently. You don't want to lose your work. No matter what application you're working in, and this includes Photoshop, always save in the native format for that application. .psd. Photoshop's native format is .psd Photoshop format. Saving the Photoshop as a .psd file ensures that you'll have all the Photoshop features in your document so that you can work on it in the future. Save as. Work on your document in the native format, and then at the end you can save as, File, Save As, and make a copy. Important! You'll need to save as and make a copy of your document as a flattened TIFF file to print at the output center. They cannot print from Photoshop files. I'll show you how to do this at the end of our video about the output center. Also, don't forget that you can also save as to make another copy of your document while you work. You can give it a slightly different name and use this copy to try something experimental with your work. If it doesn't work out, you still have your original copy. Okay, I've gotten this far. Now what if I tried this? File, Save As, same name, Experiment. Never resave a JPEG. JPEGs are a popular file format. They use lossy compression. This means that they get rid of a lot of information in the file so that it's a small file size, but it still looks pretty good. You just don't want to open a JPEG, work on it, and then resave it as a JPEG. This will recompress the file a second time, and more information will be lost. If you do this a few times, your image won't look very good. If you open a JPEG file, just save as a PSD file before you begin your work. You can always save a new JPEG copy of your Photoshop file at the end. So we've covered the Photoshop interface, we've covered setting up your document, and we've covered saving and saving as. Now, on to the next video about Photoshop basics.